So hello, my name's Rob and this is Cattle Rabbit Scale Model Studios, and in this video it's all about crystals and gems. Now if you are a hobbyist that maybe isn't the most confident with painting stuff like this is going to be a fantastic video for you, because using only 4 paints we're going to turn plain old grey plastic into something like this. It's great, it gives a really good focal pop with any miniature and is going to look fantastic. The only thing it demands is a little bit of patience, and in this video I'm going to break it down for you and show you how I do it. It's easy, just a bit time consuming. So crystals, we're just going to jump straight into this. I wanted to make this a really short video. It ended up being a little bit longer than what I would have liked. I've primed my little piece of crystal here, crystal gems in Colour Forge Death Rattle Green. The reason why I've done this is a fantastic mid-tone and it's the colour that I'm painting my trolls anyway. This is what it's going to go on. It just makes sense to do this. If not, use like a grey, a Xandri dust. Colour Forge do a lovely trench brown, really earthy colour, lovely mid-tones, use that. Now for the purpose of this video to my left, I am going to be using a wet palette. I do recommend you do the same. If not, make sure you are thinning your paints. I'll try and remind you throughout the video if I do add extra water to mixes and stuff like that, but I would probably use a wet palette. Just get a bit of sponge, get a bit of parchment paper, wet the sponge, put it on, you've got yourself a wet palette. You can dump it straight onto your desk if you need to. The other thing I will say is in this video, I'm going to use 3 paints here. This is going to be the 3 main colours that I use. I'll be referring to these is either in their colour name or their dark tone, mid tone and light tone, as you can see on screen. If I forget to refer to them, vice versa, my dark tone is Corn Red, mid tone Evil Suns, and my light tone is Wild Rider Red, vice versa. I'm also going to be using a white here, and that's Corax White. These are the only 4 colours we're using for this video, and without that, all that's out the way now, let's just get started. So the first thing we are going to need is a good brush. I'm going to be using the Citadel medium layer. It's got a nice point on it. It's a bit of a workhorse brush for me. I've had this one a little while now and it just keeps chugging along. It's a little bit split at the end, but not the end of the world. Now the first thing we are going to need to do is base coat our crystals in a white. Now the reason why we do this, and I am going to take time to explain this to people that maybe wanting to try this the first time and you're a bit of a beginner looking to kind of grow as a painter, because we want a lovely bright luscious crystal. If we are priming from like a black or straight over a mid-tone, it's going to mute the colour slightly. So the reason why we paint it white is because then the overall finish is going to be lovely and bright. If it's over black, it will take more coats to do, which for me is always more chance to become impatient and get the paint a little bit thicker and not thinned as good. Multiple thin coats, little bit of water. This took me about 3 coats of Corax White, thinned down to get a nice smooth finish. Take your time with this. This is going to be the basis of what we build on. So make sure this stage is right and you've got a nice solid colour, as you can see here. Now that's done, any colour we put on this is going to be really lovely and bright. And we're going to start with our mid-tone. For this, again, I'm going to be using Evil Sun Scarlet. Now, you're going to hear me say back and forth a lot in this video, and I do apologise in advance. But what I'm going to do here, look at this lovely bright colour. I want to preserve that, and that's, again, why we base coated everything white. Again, take your time. Thin your paint down ever so slightly. Even on the wet palette, I just added a little drop of water so it just flowed a little bit better. A couple of coats, and look how lovely and bright that is. That's exactly what we want. I want a lovely kind of ruby garnet-esque finish. So this is going to really help to achieve that. 2 coats later, that's all it was. I've got this lovely bright finish. Look at that already. If you wanted to, slap an hard coat over that, call it done. Job's a good one. However, what we want to do is something a little bit fancier. Now, Corn Red. This is a really lovely deep dark kind of reddish colour. I've added a little bit of water, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this to the bottom of the crystals. I'm going to work on each crystal one by one, and I can appreciate that this is a slightly bigger bit. You might not have, or whatever it is you're painting, you might not be using this method for crystals and stuff like that, but take your time. If you're unsure on how to do this, practice on a bit of sprue first. Just cut a little strip and just get the kind of motion down, and then you can apply that down. Once you it's like riding a bike. Once you learn this type of stuff, you can do it all the time on any scale. Just, you know, make sure your hands are comfy. I've got my hands resting on my desk here, and I'm just working to the bottom of each crystal. I have thinned this down ever so slightly, as I said. The reason for that is so I get a slightly longer working time. Once this is applied, what I'm then going to do is I'm going to get my mid-tone, and while this corn red is still wet, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get my brush, I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to start working from the corn red towards the end of the crystal again. So what effectively I'm doing, I'm starting in that wet corn red and I'm pulling that colour out. This is going to give us that really lovely smooth transition from dark to mid-tone. All I'm going to do, one by one, crystal by crystal, and I did say this did demand a little bit of patience, I'm just going to pull those colours constantly through each other. You can repeat this step as many times as you like, however I like to do that at the end. I'll talk more about that. Now I've worked through it and I've had to add a bit more corn red, a bit more mid-tone, a bit more dark tone, a bit more mid-tone. Again, we're now going to repeat this process with our light tone. So all we're going to do now, and you can probably work this out, I'm going to start with my Wild Rider Red, and I'm going to get my, you know, mid-tone ready as well. I'm going to paint this on towards the end of every crystal. So we've gone from dark to medium to light. Now, the nice thing about crystals, they have a lot of jagged edges, so it's a little bit forgiving where the light kind of hits sometimes. And obviously, if you're not doing like natural light and they haven't got a natural shine, it's, you know, where your light source is coming from. So we kind of get away with it a little bit here. But all I'm going to do again, I'm going to paint my Wild Rider Red into, you know, the crystal, and then all I'm going to do, I'm kind of agitating the paint line with Evil Sun Scarlet, my mid-tone, sorry, and I'm just pulling it back into the middle and then back up towards the end. And all this is going to do is I basically work from the tip to the middle, from the base to the middle. So we've now got our three colours and we've got that little transition just flowing through them. That is the basis of this method. It's toing and froing back and forth constantly. If it doesn't look quite right, put a little bit more corn red or a little bit light tone or vice versa and work the paints back into it. Things like Evil Sun Scarlet are quite a thin paint anyway, so with a little bit you always make a glaze and you glaze those transitions back and forth, to-ing and fro-ing constantly. Now what you can do if you really want to push the contrast, like I said about going back over it, I actually now repeat the whole process again. So I'll start again with corn red and I'll put that in my deepest parts, and then I'll kind of go back with my mid-tone and then my light tone, and I'll keep doing it that way, and then you end up with something like this. It might seem a little bit subtle, but the dark bits of crystal have really kind of come together and made everything stand out, and the light bits have got a really, really cool kind of light effect. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my light tone and my white, and I'm just going to mix the two together, probably about 50-50 is all I'm going to do on a wet palette, and we're going to do some edge highlighting. Now the best way of doing this is using the edge of your brush. If you're not confident with doing, you know, freehand highlights and things like that, don't. You know, it's the best way I can say it. Use the edge of your brush like I'm doing here and just work your way. You don't have to highlight everything. You can be really selective. If, like here, you feel that your highlight's too big, like you've seen with me, get your finger and just wipe the highlight off straight away. But all you're going to do is just work around the sharpest edges, just like this. And as you can see, it's just going to draw those points, give the impression of sharpness and light hitting the end, and that's what we want. And that's what we end up with. It's really, really good. By the time you put like a matte varnish on this, or even now if you wanted to put a varnish hard coat on, it's going to work wonders. And that's the process. You can repeat those first three steps as many times as you want to kind of push that contrast, and I would probably encourage you to, especially if this is your first time doing something like this. It's just going to make the dark bits darker and the light bits lighter, and you're going to end up with a really good effect. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think it's a great way of making a miniature pop and giving a focal point. I always say if you're looking to improve as a painter, focus on one thing at a time, but do that one thing well. On a side note, obviously I'm using reds here. If you are going to be using like blues or greens, again, just make sure you've got a light colour, a medium colour and a dark colour, and the process is exactly the same. All that changes is the name of the paints. So look, I'm going to take a look at it now. This is what it was. Again, that mid-tone really helped just kind of get things off the ground. So I'd always say prime in a mid-tone. It's always my favourite thing to do. I always do mid-tone primers. I think, you know, black and white, too extreme either way. And, you know, this is what we're left with. It looks great in my opinion. It's given me that really cool ruby garnet effect, which I really wanted. I've got some great contrast in there. And, you know, I've put some light under it so you can see it at some different angles and just how well it looks. And there it is. So crystals in just 4 paints, super easy. It's just a little bit time consuming. Seriously, try it. You'll give a really good focal point to your miniature, and it'll just make that stand out. But look, that's it from me in this one. If you've got any comments, leave it down below. I'll do my best to answer them. Any color combinations you want me to kind of go through, yeah, that worked, no, maybe try this color, yada yada, just comment below. But that's it from me in this one. I can't remember where I said like and subscribe. If you made it to the end screen, hey, how are you? All right. But look, that's it from me in this one. I'll see you all next time. God bless and take care.